Welcome to the Knowledge Seeker channel. The channel is dedicated to exploring critical issues in the world. As such, this channel is not afraid to challenge existing facts, beliefs, and practices in order to contribute to the advancement of knowledge. The title of this presentation is Nigeria a Sovereign State? This is the 1 trillion naira question. This is the map of Nigeria. It shows the 36 states that make up the country. Nigeria started as a country with 3 regions. The regions were divided into 12 states and then subsequently subdivided to the point where Nigeria now has 36 states that make up the federation. The purpose of this presentation is to achieve 2 goals. 1, to determine whether Nigeria is a sovereign state, and 2, identify and discuss the actions and inactions of Nigerian ruling elites with a view to determine whether they behave as leaders of a sovereign state or not. In order to accomplish the goals of the presentation, the following arguments are made. 1, Nigeria is legally a sovereign state but operates as a semi-autonomous nation. 2, the actions, inactions, and behaviors of the ruling elites show that they do not act as leaders of a sovereign state. 3, thus, Nigerian ruling elites do not believe that Nigeria is a sovereign state. And 4, Nigeria is more suitable to be described as a semi-autonomous nation rather than a sovereign state. Now, what is sovereignty? Sovereignty implies that the state is independent and has supreme authority or power to govern and make decisions about its territory without being subjected to the authority of another state. In other words, the state has a supreme and final authority in making decisions over its territory. Generally, to get to the point of being recognized by other sovereign states as an independent state in the global system, a political community must meet 4 preconditions as stipulated by the Montevideo Convention of 1933. Now, let's look at the preconditions of the Montevideo Convention of 1933. The convention stipulates that to have independence and become a sovereign state, a political community must meet or have 4 preconditions. They are: 1, an indigenous population; 2, a defined territory; 3, an autonomous government; and 4, an ability to establish relations with other sovereign states. Now, let's subject Nigeria to the Montevideo Convention requirements and see whether Nigeria meet the conditions. Under international law, Nigeria is recognized as a sovereign state since it supposedly gained independence on October 1, 1960. This is why it is a member of the United Nations and is recognized by almost all sovereign states in the world. It is also a member of major international organizations that are affiliated with the United Nations. This means that Nigeria has supreme authority over its territory. However, it is debatable whether Nigeria met the preconditions of the Montevideo Convention before gaining independence. Now, let's go step by step to look at those preconditions. 1. An indigenous population. It is argued here that Nigeria did not meet the precondition for an indigenous population before gaining independence. Why? There are many ways to cite or to show that Nigeria did not meet the preconditions. A. Nigerian founding fathers did not agree on what constituted Nigeria. B. This was why Chief Obafemi Awolowo referred to it as a mere geographical expression. C. This accounted for why Sir Ahmadu Bello referred to Nigeria as a mistake. D. The three major ethnic groups competed fiercely to dominate the country. Thus, they did not speak with one voice for Nigeria. E. The minority groups felt suffocated and wanted states to be created to free themselves from the political stranglehold of the majority ethnic groups. They demanded the creation of states very early in the political history of colonial Nigeria. Hence, they attended the Henry Willings Commission hearings in 1957-1958 to demand the creation of states. Thus, Nigeria did not meet the condition for an indigenous population since various groups did not agree with what is Nigeria. 2. A defined territory. A. Since the founding fathers pursued independence haphazardly from the strategic positions of their ethnic groups and regions, there was no united territory apart from what the British had put together. This prompted Chief Awolowo to say that it was a mere geographical expression, and Sir Ahmadu Bello to say that it was a mistake. B. The majority and minority ethnic groups did not agree with the territorial arrangements of the regions, as the majority ethnic groups accepted the British division of the country into 3 regions, while the minority groups wanted more regions. C. Moreover, there were the northern and southern Cameroons that were attached to Nigeria after the Second World War. D. The 1946 Constitution of Nigeria gave more than 2/3 of the landmass to northern Nigeria, while giving only 1/3 of the landmass to southern Nigeria, thereby making the north and the south unequal territorially. E. The small southern region was divided into eastern and western regions, while the huge north remained as one region. Thus, Nigeria could not clearly meet the precondition for having a defined territory. 3. An autonomous government. This is the third precondition of the Montevideo Convention, and there are many ways to discuss this requirement. A. Prior to independence, there was no autonomous government operated by indigenous Nigerians. The British colonial authorities engineered the alliance between the NCNC and the NPC to produce Abubakar Tafawa Balewa as the Prime Minister in 1957. B. The British allowed the Sokoto Caliphate to rule over the north as an Islamic entity. C. In the south, traditional leaders and warrant chiefs were allowed to rule under the supervision of the colonial authorities. There was no compatibility between the Islamic northern Nigeria and indigenous and Christian southern Nigeria. E. The regions started to operate as confederacies as soon as they were created, even before independence came on October 1, 1960. F. Due to the contradictions and the disunited nature of Nigeria, it did not take long before the first military coup struck on January 15, 1966. The outcome of the abortive coup showed a regionalized and tribalized country. G. The military coup of July 1966 also showed a regionalized and tribalized outcome. Therefore, Nigeria did not meet the precondition for autonomous government before gaining independence. 4. An ability to establish relations with the other sovereign states. This is the fourth precondition of the Montevideo Convention. Again, there are many ways to show that Nigeria did not meet this condition. A. Nigerian founding fathers were not able to establish relations with other sovereign states because they were operating under the authority of the British colonial authorities. B. Moreover, the founding fathers, after the retirement of Herbert Macaulay, competed instead of working together to fight for Nigerian independence. C. Hence, the three major political parties, namely the NCNC, the AG, which is what? Action Group, and the NPC, ended up representing the three major ethnic groups and competed fiercely to dominate Nigeria. D. Minority ethnic groups were treated as vassals of the major ethnic groups, and their interests were barely represented. Therefore, there was no autonomous government organized and operated by indigenous Nigerians prior to independence on October 1, 1960. And E. The northern region, eastern region, and western region operated as if they were separate entities working under a confederal system as they competed to dominate Nigeria. Now, let's look at how Nigeria gained independence. In other words, since Nigeria did not meet the preconditions of the Montevideo conditions, then it could be said that Nigeria gained independence due to the global campaign against colonialism. Thus, Nigeria did not meet the criteria or preconditions for gaining independence. Instead, it gained independence because of the global desire to end all forms of colonialism, aggressive wars of conquest, and abuse of human rights following the end of the Second World War. The United Nations passed the following resolutions to facilitate decolonization. A. Resolution 66 of 1946, which is what? The right to self-determination. Then the UN passed Resolution 1541, which addressed the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. Resolution 1654 of 1961, which calls for ending of colonialism and the granting of independence. D. Resolution 2625 of 1970, the right of people to self-determination and independence. Thus, Nigeria gained independence due to the UN resolutions which call for the termination of colonialism and support for self-determination and independence. This means that Nigeria did not evolve into a functioning political community before it gained independence. The actions and inactions and behaviors identified below show how Nigeria's ruling elites violate Nigerian sovereignty, thereby making it to operate as a semi-autonomous nation. So please follow me as I identify the actions, inactions, and behaviors of Nigerian rulers and the ruling elites. 1. Foreign powers continue to decide who rules Nigeria. Even though Nigerians believe that their country is an independent state, many of them are not aware that Britain, United States, and other Western powers decide who rules Nigeria. The decision concerning who should be allowed to serve as a head of state is decided in foreign capitals and not necessarily by Nigerians. Any individual who is not amenable to the interests of Britain and the West is not likely to succeed as Nigeria's head of state. Nigeria's ruling elites perpetuate the semi-autonomous status by rushing to foreign countries to seek assistance in resolving internal problems. 2. Due to the semi-autonomous status of Nigeria, Nigerian rulers always go overseas to beg for assistance. As a result of being dependent on Britain, US, China, and other countries, Nigerian heads of state travel overseas constantly like tourists. They forget that they are heads of a sovereign state, and there are many instances to cite from. A. When they experience financial pressure, they travel all over the world to beg for financial assistance and loans. B. Whenever they run into a political crisis, they fly overseas to seek advice instead of staying home and communicating with Nigerians to solve the problem. C. Challenged by terrorism, they fly overseas to seek military assistance instead of mobilizing Nigerian forces decisively to solve the problem. D. They create the impression that they do not have the intellectual capability and leadership qualities to rule Nigeria. 3. Nigerian rulers and high government officials attend every international conference imaginable. Instead of being seriously committed to governing the country, Nigerian rulers and high-level government officials always want to attend international conferences anywhere in the world. The leaders of sovereign states stay at home most of the time and seriously engage in crafting policies and implementing them to generate good government for the well-being of the citizens. On the other hand, Nigerian ruling elites cannot wait to attend international conferences and waste public funds unnecessarily. They always claim to be looking for economic partners and foreign investors. 4. The failure of Nigeria's ruling elites to behave as leaders of a sovereign state. Even though Nigeria is recognized as a sovereign state, its rulers and political elites do not regard the country as an independent state. Thus, Nigerian political elites treat Nigeria as a semi-autonomous nation. They do so by engaging in actions and behaviors that violate Nigerian sovereignty. 5. Many Nigerian ruling elites have dual citizenship or foreign resident permits. Indeed, many high-level government officials, ministers and legislators have dual citizenship. This means that they do not have loyalty to Nigeria. Some have foreign resident permits, which also means that their loyalty to Nigeria is questionable. If anything happens in Nigeria, they fly off to the foreign countries where they have legal status as citizens or residents. Some deliberately embezzle public funds in Nigeria and flee overseas to escape prosecution. They do not believe in the viability of Nigeria. Consequently, they seek citizenship of other countries while ruling Nigeria. 6. Many members of the ruling elites have foreign bank accounts while serving Nigeria. An increasing number of Nigeria's ruling elites do not even trust the banks in Nigeria, hence have foreign bank accounts. They do not realize that they could be compelled to work against Nigeria by the countries in which they have banking accounts. The foreign countries could threaten to seize their accounts if they do not cooperate in working for them against the strategic interests of Nigeria. Thus, by establishing foreign bank accounts, many members of the ruling elite do not believe that Nigeria is a sovereign state. 7. Due to the weakness of the national security system, high-level public officials are not vetted effectively. Indeed, due to the weakness of the Nigerian national security system, elected and appointed government officials are not vetted to ensure that they do not compromise the national security of the country. The failure results in many high-level appointed public officials and elected officials not being vetted thoroughly to know whether they have dual citizenship or foreign residency. A sovereign state will take all necessary measures to ensure that certain positions are not given to individuals with dual citizenship or foreign resident permits. The secret services and the national legislature politicize every activity to the extent that any individual recommended by the president for a high-level position is approved, no matter the questionable background of the person. This is why even those Nigerians who have been allegedly accused of pilfering public funds are readily approved for appointment as far as the president submits the names. Hence, Nigeria is a country where individuals who have embezzled billions of naira and have cases with the EFCC are reappointed to serve in government. The vetting process is a joke. 8. Nigeria's head of state and the ruling elites receive medical services overseas. It is the case that Nigeria's head of state, high government officials, legislators, governors, and political party leaders receive medical services overseas. The heads of state, ministers, legislators, and governors have government subsidized healthcare services. The citizens have no rights to government subsidized healthcare services. Thus, Nigeria's ruling elites do not believe that Nigeria is a sovereign state. It is unacceptable for a head of state of a sovereign country to receive healthcare services overseas. It is a no, no, and no. This is a news heading or the title of an article, and it states, African politicians seeking medical help abroad is shameful and harms health care. Published August 24, 2017. So this issue is a major issue. Why Nigerian ruling elites as well as African ruling elites prefer to receive healthcare outside of their countries instead of building up-to-date healthcare services in their own country. 9. The ruling elites send their children overseas for education. If the ruling elites believe in Nigeria's sovereignty, they would have invested massively in public education in the country. They fail to do so because they think that the country's educational system is inferior. Hence, they send their children overseas for education. Many of the children are socialized to embrace foreign cultures. Thus, they do not believe in Nigeria. Nigeria is viewed as a colony to be exploited by those who wield political power. That's why they send their children overseas. 10. Nigeria continues to suffer from educational and religious colonialism. The academic curricula in supposedly independent Nigeria have not changed from the curricula that Islamic and Christian missionaries and educators introduced. Hence, most Nigerian students are educated and socialized to embrace foreign societies and cultures. The reason is that even in the 21st century, Nigerian educational planners have not introduced courses in African history, African culture, African philosophy, and African civilizations. Consequently, most educated Nigerians have no understanding of their African societies. In terms of religion, after more than 60 years of independence, Nigeria's educational planners have not introduced courses in African religions. After the so-called independence, there is no recognizable course in comparative religion where traditional African religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, and so forth are taught to students. Basically, students in Islamic northern Nigeria are exposed to Islam and the Arab world, and students in the Middle Belt, Southeast, South-South, and the Southwest are exposed to Christianity and the Western world, and nothing about themselves. A sovereign state is supposed to establish educational curricula that reinforces its society and culture. Eleventh, no social welfare services to the citizens. Nigeria cannot claim to be a sovereign state since it cannot demonstrate an ability to offer social services to its citizens, and there are many ways and instances to show that Nigeria cannot offer social services to its citizens. A. There is no food programs for Nigerian citizens. B. There is no free educational services to Nigerian children up to secondary school level. C. There is no unemployment benefits for the citizens. D. There is no housing programs for the citizens. Thus, Nigeria cannot exercise supreme authority over its territory since it cannot afford to offer services to the citizens as the social contract demands. E. There is no easily accessible public transportation system. F. There is no subsidized healthcare program for citizens. G. There is no food assistance program that citizens can easily access. H. There is no public water management system. People buy water daily. I. There is no sewage management system. Even in the new cities being developed, there are no plans for sewage management. Due to lack of a binding social contract, it is understandable why those who wield political power are mostly in public service for self-enrichment through pilfering of state funds. 12. Nigeria is highly tribalized and regionalized. Nigeria is unable to exercise sovereignty over its territory because the country is highly nepotized, tribalized, and regionalized, thereby contradicting a sense of nationhood. It is easy to tell which ethnic group and region is in power by looking at the number of high-level appointed and elected public officials in government. And there are many ways to look at it. A. When President Muhammadu Buhari was in power, Fulanis and Muslims dominated the national government. B. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is now in power and the Yorubas dominate the national government. The Middle Belt, Southeast, and the South-South are marginalized. C. The Nigerian Armed Forces and the Nigerian Police Force are always sacrificed to make way for the president to appoint people from his ethnic group and region as heads of these forces. Third, Nigeria sacrifices its military and police institutions every time a new president comes in by having highly experienced officers forcibly retired to make way for the president to choose those he wants as heads of the security services. Under President Tinubu, both the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State for Finance are Yorubas, which is very interesting. The most prestigious diplomatic positions go to the Yoruba under President Tinubu. 13. Nigeria is a state within a state. Nigeria is strange in the sense that it is a state within a state. Hence, the Sokoto Caliphate is a state within Nigeria. The Sultan of Sokoto seems more powerful than the Nigerian head of state. This is why the head of state always kowtow to the Sultan. This is why the Nigerian head of state finds it difficult to exercise authority as the head of a sovereign state, since he or she cannot pass a law or implement a policy or take action that violates the interests of the Sokoto Caliphate. Actually, the Sultan of Sokoto greatly determines who becomes the Nigerian head of state, in conjunction with certain foreign powers. Because the Sultan of Sokoto is more powerful than the Nigerian head of state, the president always bends backwards to satisfy the wishes of the Sokoto Caliphate. And there are many ways to show this point. A. Due to the influence of the Sokoto Caliphate, the Nigerian Constitution of 1999 is Islamized to a large extent. B. The logo of the Nigerian army is written in Arabic. C. Nigeria cannot declare total war against Fulani herdsmen, bandits, kidnappers, and jihadists because the Sokoto Caliphate opposes taking strong measures against the non-state armed groups. D. Nigeria is a secular state as well as a theocratic state, hence the Sharia in some of the northern states. 14. Nigeria cannot even supply reliable electrical energy to its citizens after 60 years. Sovereignty implies an ability to have supreme authority over a defined territory. Nigeria has not been able to offer reliable electrical energy system to its citizens. Nigerians grow up knowing that their government will never be able to offer them an energy system they can depend on to take care of their energy needs, no matter the amount of money spent by successive regimes and administrations. The current Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelebu, merely apologized to Nigerians for constant failure of electricity. It is sad. 15. The Nigerian military is ill-equipped and unprepared to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria. Indeed, the Nigerian armed forces are not equipped to operate in the 21st century, hence cannot defend the territorial integrity of the country. Why? A. They are underfunded. B. They are understaffed. A country of at least 232 million people needs an army ranging from 500,000 to 1 million soldiers. C. The country needs a navy with about 100,000 personnel and submarines. And D. The country needs an air force with assorted aerial crafts capable of gathering intelligence, assorted drones, and ballistic missiles. E. Nigeria needs an effective research and development program that can develop missiles, rockets, drones, rifles, and military vehicles. F. Due to the failure to modernize the armed forces, Nigeria cannot even fight and defeat Boko Haram, Islamic State of West Africa Province, Lakurawa, Mahmuda Group, and other armed groups in the country without looking for foreign military assistance. G. The armed forces are bedecked by massive corruption. It seems that many senior military officers are interested mostly in accumulating personal wealth before they retire from service, hence pilfer defense funds recklessly. 16. Nigeria is dependent on foreign military assistance. 60 years after so-called independence, the Nigerian military continues to depend on foreign military assistance. And this takes place in so many ways. A. The constant begging for military equipment. B. Relying excessively on foreign military training. President Tinubu just made a deal with France to train military personnel. C. Armed forces that cannot function optimally without foreign involvement. D. Relying on foreign powers for aerial intelligence. Here you have news headlines. China's foreign minister pledges military aid for Africa. Tinubu presidency begs US to give Nigerian military support to fight terrorists. Always begging at the slightest military threat. 17. Nigeria has a lackluster foreign policy goals. Today, Nigeria seems to operate without a strategic orientation in executing its foreign policy. Hence, it is difficult to identify the foreign policy goals of Nigeria. This is why Nigeria simply floats in the global system without direction, because the ruling elites pay little or no attention to Nigerian foreign policy. Due to lack of a strategic foreign policy goals, the head of state travels from one country to another to beg for assistance. Yet, Nigeria claims to be the giant of Africa. It is a big joke. A joke indeed. 18. No attention is paid to the Nigerian diplomatic service. Increasingly, Nigerian presidents have been paying very little attention to the Nigerian diplomatic sector. This is demonstrated by the fact that Nigerian embassies are not well maintained, especially under the APC administrations. Poor attention is paid to appointing ambassadors, coordinate Nigerian embassies, and represent Nigeria abroad. There is no effective program to promote Nigerian cultures and educate the world about Nigeria. There is little or no respect for Nigerian officials overseas due to the failure of the nation to act like a sovereign state. 19. The corruptible behavior of Nigerian ruling elites. It is not exaggeration to say that Nigerian ruling elites do not believe that Nigeria is a sovereign state. Why? A. They pay little or no attention to the fact that Nigeria is an independent state. B. They behave as if Nigeria is a colony to be exploited. C. They act as if Nigeria is about to disintegrate, so they loot public funds that are necessary to run the country. D. They run for public office and seek government appointments, mostly to loot funds allocated for building healthcare and educational facilities. E. They get rich by serving in government. Thus, in Nigeria, the primary means of accumulating private wealth is through serving in government. F. Many millionaires and billionaires acquire their wealth through looting public funds. This is why Nigeria is a country where most individuals who claim to be millionaires and billionaires are not engaged in any wealth creating economic activity, yet are rich. G. It is not unusual for some public officials to embezzle funds totaling 200 billion naira with little or no consequence. Here you have posters, demonstrations about corruption in Nigeria. See, look at the first poster. Corruption is killing us. Here you have Nigeria's corruption crisis. Where did the billions go? The monies keep disappearing. The federal government keep borrowing and spending, and Nigerians don't see where the money goes. 20. If Nigeria is a sovereign state, why are some Nigerians more powerful than the state? It is the case that in Nigeria, some individuals and groups are treated as if they are more powerful than the state. Hence, they cannot be arrested regardless of the crimes they commit against the state. The institutions of government tend to dance around when certain individuals violate the law. Instead of arresting and prosecuting them, the government dances around and give flimsy excuses. This is why Nigeria has not been able to arrest and prosecute those who sponsor terrorism. The government knows them, but does not have the political will to arrest and prosecute them. And yet Nigeria claims to be a sovereign state. 21. Nigeria is a petroleum exporting country, but also imports refined petroleum. If Nigeria is a sovereign state, it will not allow some powerful individuals to import refined petroleum into the country when the country is a crude oil producer. Thus, Nigeria perhaps is the only country that produces crude oil and import refined petroleum instead of refining petroleum at home. This is why local refineries are sabotaged so that the importers can continue to import refined petroleum products into the country. Refined petroleum importers are politically so powerful that the president of Nigeria cannot stop them from the importation of petroleum. And yet Nigeria claims to be a sovereign state. 22. Nigeria cannot protect its mineral resources through effective management. Nigeria's rulers have passed various military decrees and legislative acts to nationalize all minerals in the country. Yet, it is not able to exercise authority over the ownership and management of solid minerals, while liquid minerals are overly nationalized. The federal government, 36 states, 774 local governments, and the Federal Capital Territory depend almost totally on revenue generated through oil and gas, and fail woefully to generate national wealth through the exploration of gold, tin, and other solid minerals. Nigerian rulers do not care about cleaning the pollution caused by oil and gas exploration. in the Niger Delta South. All what they want is the oil. No more, no less. Here you have a title of a news report from the Economic Times. NEC or NEC raises alarm over large-scale illegal mining, theft of Nigerian solid minerals, and the federal government of Nigeria is unable to do anything to stop the illegal mining of solid minerals in the country, and yet send troops to the Niger Delta South to occupy the region and take the oil. 23. Nigerian rulers prefer to beg for foreign investment instead of promoting indigenous investment in the economic development of the country. Nigeria is a semi-autonomous nation, hence its rulers travel all over the world to beg for foreign investors to come to Nigeria and help to develop the economy, instead of mobilizing indigenous entrepreneurs to do so. Nigerian rulers, due to short-sightedness, fail to create an enabling economic environment that allows Nigerians to invest in various businesses in the country. The rulers do not have much faith on the citizens, hence always seek foreign investors to come and turn the economy around, instead of mobilizing the citizens to do so. Here you have a news caption. Viewpoint, October 7, 2024. Tinubu's drive for foreign direct investments. And Nigeria claimed to be a sovereign state, a country with over 200 million people, and the leader of the country cannot utilize his citizens to develop the country, always flying overseas, as if somebody else is going to come and help develop your country for you. 24. Nigerian presidential candidates and the Chatham House. If Nigerian ruling elites strongly believe that Nigeria is a sovereign state, then presidential candidates would not have been trooping to Chatham House to explain their goals for Nigeria. President Buhari set the precedent. Hence, prior to the 2023 presidential election, Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and Mr. P2B went to Chatham House to explain their intentions to rule Nigeria, as if Chatham House is part of Nigeria. Where in the world do presidential candidates go to a foreign country to debate or explain how they are going to rule their own countries? Where? Where? Except Nigerian ruling elites who have no regard for Nigerian sovereignty. See them in Chatham House. 25. A sovereign state does not surrender its taxing operations to a foreign country. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu announced that France will assist Nigeria to carry out tax reforms and economic development initiatives, Nigeria pretty much forgo its sovereignty and decided to hand over its critical financial and economic functions to a foreign state. No sovereign state will surrender its taxation and economic development schemes to a foreign power. If the presidency had thought about the implications of the bilateral agreement on the sovereignty of Nigeria, the deal would not have been struck. Think about it. 60 years after independence, Nigeria is seeking the assistance of a foreign country to come and help develop its taxing situation. Here you see the Nigerian official and the French official signing an agreement over the tax cooperation deal in Nigeria. 26. Nigeria has a wasteful political system that drains the country financially and disunites the people. 60 years after the so-called independence, Nigeria continues to operate a political system that destroys the country. And there are many instances to cite from to show this destructive pattern. A. Politicians and the political parties do not have ideological plans for the development of the country. B. The political parties operate as cartels intended to exploit the citizens and the state for the benefits of the members of the cartels. C. The president, senators, representatives, governors, and local government chairs spend more time campaigning for re-election and fail to govern. D. Politicians violate the law and engage in all kinds of rigging to be in power or retain power. E. Electoral votes are not important since individuals are pre-selected to occupy elective offices even before elections take place. The politicians nepotize, tribalize, and regionalize the political system, thereby polarizing the country. Palliatives are stolen from the citizens and used as election devices to attract votes. Nigerian politicians intentionally pauperize the citizens to render them powerless and controllable. The financial cost of running the political system is expensive, wasteful, and drains the country. 27. Nigerian ruling elites view Nigeria as a colony and exploit it. Since massive corruption, especially the pilfering of public funds, is carried out by the ruling elites, it means that they do not regard Nigeria as a sovereign state. Instead, they treat it as a colony, hence the massive exploitation. Since they view it as a colony, they are not patriotic. They are basically internal colonizers, hence only care about what they can get from it. Thus, patriotism is a strange word in Nigeria. Now, let's look at the only regimes and administrations that have acted to reinforce Nigerian sovereignty. So if you look at the history of Nigeria, there are only few regimes and administrations that acted as governments of a sovereign state. Of all the military regimes and civil administrations that have ruled Nigeria, it could be said that the General Murtala Mohammed, General Olusegun Obasanjo regime was the one that acted to reinforce Nigerian sovereignty. When General Mohammed died, General Obasanjo worked very hard to sustain the goals of the regime. Obasanjo even seized Shell Company property to show that Nigeria was in charge of its affairs. It had clear domestic and foreign policy goals and worked very hard to achieve the liberation of Africa from colonialism. The Umaru, Yar'Adua, and Goodluck Jonathan's administrations tried to ensure the sovereignty of Nigeria. Due to General Murtala's commitment to Nigerian sovereignty, and African liberation, he was killed in an abortive military coup. Coincidentally, when Nigeria grew economically to become the 20th largest economy and the third fastest growing economy, President Goodluck Jonathan had to be removed from power. After President Jonathan, Nigeria ended up becoming more of a colony than a sovereign state when President Muhammadu Buhari took over. Since then, Nigeria has been sliding downwards. Like President Buhari, President Tinubu spends a considerable amount of time traveling all over the world to beg for assistance instead of working with Nigerians at home to solve Nigerian problems. This is General Murtala Mohammed on the left and General Olusegun Obasanjo on the right. It clearly seemed that this regime was the one that demonstrated that Nigeria was an independent country, and they pursued a pro-Pan-African independent government. So you can see why General Murtala Mohammed was killed. Conclusion. In conclusion, the following observations are made. 1. Indeed, Nigeria is legally a sovereign state but operates politically as a semi-autonomous nation. 2. The actions, inactions, and behaviors of the ruling elites show that they do not act as leaders of a sovereign state. 3. The country is highly nepotized, tribalized, and regionalized to the extent that there is no national unity. 4. Thus, Nigeria's ruling elites are the primary violators of Nigerian sovereignty. They don't care about Nigeria and they don't care about Nigerians. 5. The heads of state of Nigeria spend more time traveling around the world to beg for assistance instead of mobilizing the citizens to work together to develop the country. 6. The Nigerian military is subjected to frequent military training by foreign countries as if the country is semi-autonomous. 7. The bread basket of the country, that is the oil and gas region of the Niger Delta South-South, is treated as a colony and is exploited and marginalized by the ruling elites. 8. Consequently, Nigeria is more suitable to be described as a semi-autonomous nation and not a sovereign state. No wonder some Nigerians are demanding a breakup of the country because it has failed to operate as a sovereign state. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Although it is very long, nevertheless, it is very informative and enlightening. Please subscribe to the channel, and there are several interesting presentations under the Knowledge Seeker channel. And if you have opportunity, please read the book Why African Countries Are Not Independent States. Thank you again for listening to the presentations. Do not fail to subscribe to the channel.